Flyers are tonight on our sister station in 104.1 FM and 1450 AM. All guests appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Our next guest will be talking some Flyers with Steve Coates here on the Sports Bash, the Flyers radio analyst who was on the call last night, even though it was a national television broadcast. The local guys still had the radio call. You heard that game right here on 97.3 ESPN as the Flyers lose to the Pittsburgh Penguins, gave up 5 again to the Pens, and 4-game losing streak here, Coatsy. They had been playing so well. Are you starting to see something that is got you concerned?
No, not yet, Michael. I think that what's happened here is, if I try to look at it as objectively as possible, when you take a look, they played Carolina, which started the 4-game losing streak and just were really not very good. And, you know, they had gone such a great run, you figured they were going to hit a wall sooner or later. But I thought they'd recover. And they really did, except for some mistakes that, you know, they made in the Tampa Bay game. And in the 4 games, they really haven't got very good goaltending. So I'm thinking now that taking a look at Mrazek and net, he got off to a great start, but I think he hit a wall. And now I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Lyon in here tonight. But on top of that, the team has played, after Carolina, they played the number 1 team in the National Hockey League, Tampa. Then they played the hottest team in the last 2 months in the National Hockey League in the Florida Panthers. Playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, number 2, now number 1 in the Metropolitan Division. Then tonight they got the Bruins, number 2 in the Atlantic Division. Then they got the Winnipeg Jets and the Vegas Knights, 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference. So this is a very hard stretch, but they're halfway through it. Now they have an opportunity to change the tide, and they've just got to start playing a lot more conscientious in their own zone and get the save. They're not getting the save right now. They got it when Mrazek still got here, but now they're not getting it, and that's tough to overcome.
Now, you mentioned Lyon. He didn't play in the back-to-back on Sunday after Mrazek kind of got lit up there for, 6 in that game, but they went right back to him. But you think you'll see Lyon tonight then on the back-to-back. This is a tough spot on a 4-game skid to go to that kid, right?
Well, it's a tough spot, but you know what happens? If you lose rhythm with your goalies, it's tough to recover. Sometimes you got to make that leap of faith. Right now, I mean, I think Mrazek, and the other thing too is that understand that when a goaltender comes from a team to a new team, understanding what's going in front of them and what's going on in front of them is very, very tough. We always talk about, just stop the puck. Well, knowing where your defensemen are going to be and how they tend to do things, that's really a tough transition. And I think that the combination of what's happened, he got traded, he had to get up in the middle of the night, a lot of things going on, he hasn't got a place, he's living in a hotel, all these different things, it hits you sooner or later. Now, that's not an excuse, it's just a reality. But the bottom line is that analytics say to you, back-to-back, you play your backup goalie. But I think that what Hack was looking at last week, and maybe, Kimmy Dillabaugh, the coach of the goaltenders rather, was the fact that, okay, he played poorly against Tampa. Maybe he'll bounce back against Florida because we traded for him. He's a veteran. And it is a little nerve-wracking playing a rookie at this time of year. But sometimes you got to take that leap of faith, like I mentioned. And I'm just going out on a limb and telling you that's what I think is going to happen. I won't know that for another hour, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Steve Coates with us here, the analyst for the Flyers Radio Network. Again, Flyers and Bruins tonight. Coates, you walked through that Florida trip and the 4-game skid and sort of went through those games. I thought in each of those games, and I agree with you, they sort of were sleepwalking against Carolina. But in the 2 Florida games, it was 2 different things. In the Tampa Bay game, they couldn't get the puck out of their own end, and then the stretch passes were the Achilles heel against the Florida Panthers. And then last night, again, they go up against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh able to basically, other than a stretch of the second period, Pittsburgh, I mean, they lost 2 guys last night, and Pittsburgh was the better team on the ice.
Well, I think that what you had is that when you take a look at the matchups, Couturier did a great job on Malkin. And see, what they do is they have Malkin on one line, Crosby on another line, and Kessel on the third line. So it's very tough to be able to match lines to be able to shut them down. The idea was to put Fipple up against Crosby. It didn't work. They were -3. So when that happens, that sure takes the wind out of your sails and changes the complexion of the hockey game. And that's what happened last night. The other thing that happened was that the fact that you cannot cannot, first of all, make mistakes and allow them to come the other way. 2-on-1 last night with Crosby and Sherry. Just can't happen. You got to watch who's out there. You got to understand what's going on, and you got to make sure that you do the right thing so you don't have that. That's the wrong guy to have the puck on a 2-on-1. And once again, you look at the goaltending. Go back to Florida, like you mentioned, the stretch passes. Well, those are basically 3 breakaways and a 50% breakaway that ended up causing you to lose 4-1. They outshot the Florida Panthers. They outshot them and lose 4-1. So those are the kind of things that kind of creep up on you. And if you can get the goaltending and the big side, the other thing too, it's not just number of goals; it's the rhythm of the game, where the goal comes at the most inopportune time that just kind of takes everything out of the team, deflates it, and the timing couldn't be worse. And that happened against Tampa when they were up. They kept losing ground. They did it again last night, taking a lead and losing ground. The other problem they're having right now is when you really look and take in consideration the overtime losses, they're basically less than 500 at home. That's not good. That was going to be my follow-up question to you about home, because I saw that stat today and I almost fell out of my chair. That all 16 NHL teams that are in playoff spots, only one of them has more losses than wins at home. I mean, you initially look at the record and they're 16-11 at home. Well, they're above 500, but technically they have 16 wins at home, 17 losses. Can you put your finger on why they're struggling at home? Yeah, and when you take a look at this hockey team, I think the bottom line is you got to make other teams feel uncomfortable coming into your building. That's just the bottom line. Now, back in the day, you just intimidated the hell out of them, and they were terrified to come down the Zamboni tunnel. But now the game has changed, but you still have to be able to dominate, and don't let them feel comfortable. They dominated, did a good job. I thought that they came after them, but they don't come after them in such a way where, the other team's going to feel uncomfortable. And then you have a hit like Robert Haig made last night, and you just go, are you kidding me? That's the kind of hit that you put on a guy in your own building to make, and then Russ gets off the ice. So what? I mean, and that's what the game's all about. But if you penalize something like that, so what's going to tell that to your team that the fact, well, you got to watch what you do. You can't make that call, and your referees can't be involved with that, and it's sad that was made, because that came at a very inopportune time in that hockey game.
Yeah, Mike Milbury even jumped on board with that, and if Mike Milbury is supporting the Flyers, then it must be an egregious call. He said it's the wussification of the league, Coatsy.
Well, I don't think – I agree with him. I absolutely agree with him, and I don't think Mike Milbury is siding with the Flyers as much as he's taking on what's wrong with the game. I mean, first of all, how's the guy out in the neutral zone 100 feet away from the backboards making a call on a boarding call? He has no clue if that's a board. All he sees is a guy getting Russ, and if Russ didn't go down, I call that an RBR, referee by result. So the guy goes down, he must be hurt, it's got to be a penalty. The league's got to stop with this. It's just wrong.
Yeah, they highlighted it on the intermission last night, showing that the Penguins player had his eyes up, that he saw that there was somebody coming his way, and then he chose to kind of pull up in that segment, in that session there. And you're right, it just seemed that the official just kind of like in football, they just anticipate that a helmet-to-helmet hit or a violent hit is a violent hit when it's not sometimes.
There were 2 calls last night that were made by the far official, not the close guy. It was the guy, like Coatsy said, 80 feet away.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the hit, your responsibility as a player is to be able to protect yourself first. And so when you go into the corner, you go behind the wall or behind the net, and you know that you're going to get hit, you get yourself up against the boards, not looking down and not just putting your back to the player and then putting your head up against the boards. Rust was in the right position. He was up against the wall. So when Haig hit him, it was perfect. It was a perfect combination of what this is about, what this game's about. Watch when, I'll tell you, a guy does this very, very well, might be as good as anybody I see in the league, about handling the puck and getting himself in the right position against the wall, and that's Sean Couturier. He does it really good. Makes sure that he's got his body up against the wall and uses his feet to be able to move the puck, gets a stick on it. That's why people, you can't have a penalty like that in a time where you're trying to take control of the game, trying to use the body. The coach of the Flyers wanted to go after the Pittsburgh Penguins, wanted to stay out of the box. The next thing you know, he's got a penalty like that, getting the #1 power play in the National Hockey League. and it's not the right call. I mean, it's one thing to have a bad call. It's another thing to have a stupid call. And that's stupid, and that came at a very inopportune time.
Coates, when the Flyers played the Bruins on December 2nd, and that was a nationally televised game, Flyers lose 3-0. That was almost, you could argue, the low point of the season. How far have they come, and how tough is it going to be for them tonight in this back-to-back situation where the Bruins were off, they were resting, and the Flyers come in as coming off the Pittsburgh loss?
Well, it's not an easy situation where you got to come off playing the Penguins at home. You played at 8 o'clock last night. You got in here at 1:30, and you got to play the Bruins tonight at 7 o'clock. But the thing you got to look at is the Bruins are missing David Backes, they're missing Bergeron, and they're missing McAvoy back on the blue line. So that's where you've got to take advantage of your opportunities when you're missing 3 quality players like that. Mm-hmm. And Bergeron obviously is one of the best centers in the National Hockey League. Krejci, I think, is one of the hidden secrets of the National Hockey League, the second center here. But when you take a look at a team and you say, okay, how good are they in the middle? You got Riley Nash and Tommy Wingels playing in the middle right now. That's 2 of their 4 centers. That means you got an opportunity to win this hockey game.
Well, they need to. They've dropped 4 in a row. Then all of a sudden, you go from being a point out of the top spot to just a couple points out of that wild card spot now, as opposed to being in the top 3. So we're running out of games, but they're all very important. And Steve Coates will call the action with Tim Saunders tonight on the Flyers Radio Network as the Flyers are in Boston to take on the Bruins. Coatesy, enjoy Beantown, pal.
Gentlemen, thanks very much for the time.
Thank you, Stephen. Always good to catch up with Steve Coates.
Steve Coates, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.